Hey everyone, this is Gary Kay, and I have a special guest today. I'm going to kind of introduce you to somebody probably most of you don't know, but hopefully you'll know after this. We're connecting on LinkedIn, and I run across this profile that the title of her position is footballer and AV professional. Notice footballer was first, AV professional was second. Kaylee Copeland, thanks for joining me on my Rants and Raves podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, notice footballer was first, AV professional second, even though the footballing is probably not making you the money right now. Obviously, there's the passion there. Talk about your background with what we call in the U.S. soccer.
Yeah, so actually, I'm from Canada, so we call it soccer as well.
Okay.
I actually play for Team Guyana for their national senior team. So it's football in the Caribbean, so I'm used to using that terminology there. So the reason why it's first is because it actually is my true passion in life. I love the audiovisual industry. I love technology. I love to dweeb out, but my true one passion is, soccer. I remember being at, I think it was like a LinkedIn sort of like how to improve your profile. And they told that your header shouldn't really be your position, but like who you are. So I felt that was really, who I was essentially.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'm not sure we haven't made this connection yet, and today's the first time we ever met. And I'll put your LinkedIn profile in my description of this podcast. I'd encourage you to connect with Kaylee. Kaylee actually works for Diversified. She's a senior account executive at Diversified. I know everyone knows who Diversified is, the second largest integrator in the world. But she came from Spark AV, which we'll get back to in just a second. But I also, in addition to my professional life, part of my personal life is I teach at the University of North Carolina. I teach advertising and branding. And the University of North Carolina is the head of women's soccer in the world. We've actually won 23 national champions and had more women's soccer players go on to national teams. I'm guessing that some of my former students might actually have played with you or against you at some point in time, because the last women's Olympics, or the last both Olympics and in the World Cup, featured about 6 to 8 of my former students.
Wow!
That are on the Women's World Cup or the Olympic team. A lot of them end up majors in advertising. So I hadn't put that connection together. But why didn't you play college? I noticed that you went to Ryerson in Canada. Is there a reason why you didn't come and play in college? Because college soccer is a big giant sport here in the U.S. Not that I wanted you to leave Canada, but.
No, absolutely. And it was definitely one of my goals, as I was growing up when I was in high school. So I did those showcase tournaments. I went down to the U.S., got a few letters and offers. It just, for some reason, it didn't work out. The timing didn't work out for me. So I never actually ended up pursuing that opportunity. Although now looking back, hindsight's 2020, would have loved to pursue it, because it is, like you said, where if you want to learn and kind of progress your career in soccer, it's generally the route you take is go and do your education in the US. So I played varsity soccer in Canada. Now it doesn't quite have the, reputation of the US D1 school kind of competition, but sure. I learned a lot, and then obviously education was important as well, because I obviously want to have a career coming out of it. So it just happened that way. But I mean, I don't regret staying in Canada, going to school here. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have met my partner and that type of thing. So, but definitely, I've noticed the girls that come back from those programs are like at top notch, which is part of what makes it such a competitive thing for me right now as I'm aging, and these girls are, training 24/7 with their D1 school or their varsity team. So I'm competing against those ladies. So it is interesting, but it's amazing how progressive it is getting in women's soccer. It's becoming a lot more.
It's a huge sport.
Quality,
I mean,
right? Yeah.
It's, if you look at the Olympics, it's everyone's top third or fourth sport. In some cases, top two. You have track and field and swimming always are popular every year, but women's soccer is becoming one of those top 4 or 5 sports that everyone's watching. And then of course the Women's World Cup was hugely popular. I wish you the best in that as you play for the national team in Guyana. But let's talk about Spark AV. So first, your first foray into our industry. I know that you worked for Goodyear, I believe, tire company. How did you get from that to AV? I'm not sure I make that connection. How did you get to
So
Spark AV from that?
I actually literally fell into this industry. I didn't even really know AV. I didn't like, I knew what an HDMI cable is, but beyond that, like I just didn't know the whole gamut of technology. So I saw an advertisement in like, you know, like your Workopolis kind of site, and they were looking for experience. But I just noticed the office was literally 2-minute drive from my house. So it just seemed like, you know, I'm going to apply. I needed a job. I wanted to kind of get out of my last role that I was at. It was sort of kind of plateaued. I wasn't going anywhere there, and I wasn't learning anything. And that is really important to me. So when I saw that opportunity, and in fact, I was when I actually had my first interview with the president at Spark AV, he actually sent me home with homework to do some research and really find out, like at the time it was the link room systems before, you know, Skype for Business.
Yeah.
So he actually sent me home with homework. I came up with a big list of information that I had learned on my second interview. And I guess it just really resonated that you don't necessarily need the experience, because if you have that willingness to learn, you know, you can kind of go for it. So that's how I started.
Well, when we were talking offline, you talked about how that you were one of the first women in that organization that came into the organization, and that you've noticed that there's not a lot of women in the technology field, specifically in AV. So as a woman who's obviously come through this now you've been in the industry for 6 years, how do we solve that problem? What do we need to do? What's the next step? I actually have a series of podcasts I've done over the last 3 years highlighting some of the most successful women in our industry. And they all have different sort of viewpoints on it. But you're only 6 years out. So that you're kind of closer to it than most of them, because most of the ones I've talked to have been in the industry for decades, and they'd like to just bring more women in the industry for the diversity value and things like that, which is obvious. But what do we got to do as an industry? How do we make it more accommodating?
That is a great question. So obviously I'm part of the Avixa Woman Council. I am one of the, like, I began when the Toronto chapter started with the two Christinas who are the leaders here.
Yep.
So it is obviously a topic that women talk about all the time, especially those that are in the industry. And what I think is just maybe the awareness isn't there. So for example, like I was mentioning, I play with a lot of younger girls that are coming out of university that are actually looking for career. So I actually spend time explaining to those girls what I do for a living and see if there's any interest there. So I've actually gotten one of my friends to come along to an event just to kind of feel it out. But like you said, there's so many thoughts on it. Like obviously, you know, the support of leaders, which are predominantly men, is very important for, you know, women to kind of get more of those higher level positions in the industry. But I think it's an awareness thing. I didn't even know about the audiovisual industry, and I just fell upon it, right? So it was just a luck that I fell in. And I think that's generally how we get into the industry. But if we made it more like an effort to kind of make a awareness at a younger age, because technology is cool, right? It's obviously not going anywhere. You're always learning. So I think that might be it. It's just getting more people aware of the industry. But I don't know, what are you thinking? What are some of the other
It's a heck of a dilemma. And my company, rAVe, you know, although we're a small company, we're easily 80% women. In fact, my boss, the president of the company, who's my partner actually in the business.
That's cool.
She's been in the industry since about 15, 16 years now. And we talk about this all the time. How do we get more women in the industry? And I definitely think, and she has, you know, we've talked about, like, there's a side of women in the industry, like we need to get to a place where we don't need to have a women in the AV industry council. Like the whole point of having it seems kind of, you know, the opposite of what you want to have, right? But you have to start somewhere. I definitely agree. Part of it is awareness. Absolutely. I think our industry in general, although we're dealing with really cool projects. I mean, you go to Disney and you ride Rise of the Resistance, the Star Wars ride. That's all AV. The whole thing is driven by AV, right? You go to immersive experiences. You know, you look at people's Instagram feeds, and they're putting up pictures of AV installs all the time because they're blown away by them, but they don't realize it's AV. And so I think that's part of it. And then I think the other part of it is we have a systemic problem, I guess you'd say, with technology in general, where technology was created and driven by men for the first decade completely. You look at the original picture of the original people at Microsoft, the original 20 employees, the original 20 employees of Apple, and the original 20 employees of Facebook and Google. There's like one woman in all those pictures, and it's usually an accountant or something like that. And so I think that it's an issue that I think will solve itself 20 years from now, and I'm not sure there's a way to accelerate it, but I'm hoping things like this can help. So let's say I'm somebody who let's pretend like I'm watching this and I'm a woman and I'm thinking about changing careers. What's a day in the life for Kaylee like? Like when you get up, what do you do? And I know now it's different because we're having to wear headphones all day and we're on virtual, but tell us if you're a senior account executive at a company like Diversified, and you were a senior account executive also at rAVe, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
What do you do? What is your day? What is your role?
Okay. So my role, it's interesting because so at rAVe, because we were a smaller organization, you sort of wore multiple hats. And so you need to learn the technology. So I'm in sales, and I do find when I am trying to, portray a particular solution or technology offering, you need to know the technology. So I'm very much sales driven, and numbers is what I go after. I have target thresholds, but really the knowledge is what I find is the most important for me today, and being able to articulate and have those discussions, because in today's age, right, like there's so much is changing so fast. So really just being able to speak on a very similar level to some of those clients. So it's really about just getting in front of people. I'm looking for, folks that are in the technology realm and that are looking, either they have a particular need they're trying to solve, or maybe they're just looking to see what's sort of the next and newest thing. So just me trying to getting in front, getting our brand, getting Diversified out there. I don't know if you knew, but we're actually fairly new to the Canadian market. So the acquisition, they acquired a company last year. So
Which company was it they purchased?
It was called Advanced Presentations.
Oh yeah.
Products.
Okay.
Yeah. So they had 25 years experience. Diversified, saw a ton of synergy between the two companies. It was just a great marriage. So really today I'm out there, letting everyone know that, hey, Diversified has this great footprint now in Canada, and trying to figure out what everyone's doing just based on what's going on, the crazy unknowns, and just trying to get in front of people. Like you said, we're out with headphones now.
I mean, it sounds like that what you're talking about, what you're describing is more of a relationship. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No,
more of a relationship position than a sales position. It sounds like you're really sort of coaching them based on what they're telling you rather than trying to sell them something.
Absolutely. Just because of our industry, right? There's a ton, like a massive gamut of solutions that could actually achieve, many solutions that can achieve a particular need. But it's really understanding the roadmap of a particular client, building that relationship so they feel comfortable talking to you about those sort of initiatives that's happening in their organization. So very much a relation-driven job for me, for sure. Absolutely.
And so how long, let's go back to your soccer career for a minute. So you said you're on the national team for Guyana. Will you make the World Cup team?
So that is one of our biggest constraints with Team Guyana. It's so we don't actually have that great funding like the US team or the Canadian team.
Right.
So it is, we try to qualify. So my last big tournament was, I believe, the CONCACAF for the Olympic qualifier. I think it was in 2015. So we actually haven't been to that sort of stage from a women's national perspective since then. Really cool is our U20 women's team just did extremely well in the CONCACAF qualifier for the World Cup. They made it to the quarterfinals, which is unheard of for a country like us. So huge pushes. We have a really great head coach on board now. His name is Ivan Joseph. So he was actually my athletic director at Ryerson University. So I had a really good relationship prior. So he's doing some great things with the program, but when you don't have the funding, it just becomes very difficult. And we have we've adopted a strategy because of the development of football in Guyana. It's very tough to get women and girls to the levels that some of the North American players are playing at, just
Yeah,
because of the accessibility, the competition. So
sure.
we've adopted so we do a lot of international as well as home-based players. So we merge the teams together. But can you imagine merging a team and then going to play against the
Yeah, and
US when we've
they've
had
never
a
met, and
week?
you're like,
Yeah,
oh yeah,
exactly.
here's your
Yeah,
right
yeah, go
wing.
at
Yeah,
it.
here's your goalie.
So it
Trust
is
her.
very tough that way. So we compete the best possible. We do very well in the Caribbean. We play in the Caribbean Football Federation. But once we get to that CONCACAF level, when we're dealing with the US, the Canadians, the
Yeah,
Mexicos, it just becomes, there's a big disparity
yeah.
between, just
Well, if you're someone
unfortunate,
playing
right?
full time all the time, then it's going to be a disparity no matter what. What, by the way, before we go, what is your position? What's your?
I'm a striker, so
Okay, so you're
I
moving a
like to
lot.
shoot. I like to shoot. Yeah, yeah. I'm a fast. My speed is what I have. I still have it. Hopefully, I haven't played in a couple months, right? But yeah, no, I'm a striker. I've been thinking about, because as I'm aging, typically you kind of get slided down into the back. So I am thinking about making a move. I'm not sure what my coaches think about that, but yeah, I generally like to shoot, go for the glory, that type of thing.
Well, I really appreciate you joining me, and I'm going to put,
Thank
like I
you.
said, your LinkedIn connection on here to connect with you. But also, if you are someone who's thinking about getting in the industry, or you have a daughter and you're thinking about, hey, how do I convince her to get in the industry?
Yes.
Or you have a friend who has a daughter who you think should be getting in this industry, Kaylee would be someone to talk to. I'm going to put words in your mouth. You'll mentor, right?
No,
You'll help mentor somebody.
absolutely. Absolutely. I would love that opportunity because, I mean, the more, you know, differences we have in the organization, like for example, my team is made of all men, and they actually never had a woman in their organization from a sales perspective. So when I joined the team, they thought it was refreshing. Like they enjoyed that different way of collaboration, that type of thing. So I would love the opportunity. If anyone's interested, just want to have a couple questions about the industry, please link up. I would love that.
And Kaylee's in Toronto, which is a beautiful city in Canada. So this is an opportunity for you to not only see a great place potentially right now through Zoom. Unfortunately, we're not too far away from opening back up. But look, Kaylee, I really appreciate you joining me. Kaylee Copeland, the footballer and AV professional from Diversified. Thanks again. And I want to thank you all for watching. You can watch all of my video casts and podcasts at ravepubs.com. We've been doing a lot of these with women in the industry for over the years, so you can just flip through all the Rants and Raves podcasts. You'll see them all there. And thanks for watching today. Everyone have a great day.
Gary, thanks so much. Have a great day.